Hey, thank you everyone for joining us. Just give me a thumbs up using your emojis on Zoom if you can hear me clearly. If I see a couple of thumbs up, I'll assume that I'm coming through clear. Awesome, thank you. For folks, can you just type in the chat as to where you're joining from, but just get a sense of where people are joining from. Welcome, Dan. Hey, Joe. Hey, Arya. Hey, Tina.
Hey, Lex. Hi, Tina.
Harrison, Preeti, Rajan. Hey, folks. We got some new faces. We got some regulars. Always fun. All right, we got people from India. Just going to pan and zoom a little bit as you get. So folks who just joined us, I think there are 3 people who just joined us. Type in the chat as to where you're joining us from. Harrison, Preeti, Dan, you are in Pune. Okay. You certainly get around, my friend. The last time I think you were somewhere else. Shweta's in Berlin. All right. So you got Europe ticked off. You got South America ticked off. You got Susan from Uruguay. Hey, Susan, good to have you again. We've got folks in the Northeast. We still don't have people in Africa and in Australia. And hopefully one day we'll get there where we kind of tick off every single continent. Right? So for the couple of people who just joined us now, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And we're just getting a sense of who is in the room. Welcome, everyone. I think Neela just joined us. And for all of you who just joined, put in a word in the chat, in the Zoom chat. You don't need to go anywhere else, just to let us know where you're joining from. Would love a sense of the folks who are joining us today. So bonus points for anyone from Africa or Australia, because those are the 2 continents we haven't managed to cover in today's session. You can't lie, though, although the StreamAlive application assumes it's super. Thank you, folks. Just a little more color on everyone on the room, if you don't mind. If I were to ask you what you do for a living, and describe that in 1 to 2 words. And by the way, if you do multiple things for a living, give multiple chat answers, one after the other, right? Just comment on the chat. In my dominant phase, I consider myself to be, I'm going to answer as well, to be a tech entrepreneur. Awesome. Susan, knowing you from the past, I'm assuming that's you. Good to have you. So one of my avatars is as a tech entrepreneur. It always amazes me at the kind of variety we have over here, people in product and marketing and brand growth and financial planning, host moms, eat. Okay, that's something you can do as well. I'm very curious about that. We got people in technology and a business coach. It's just amazing to see the kind of variety of the folks who join us for this. And I don't take that privilege lightly. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is fantastic. Let's dive right into today's agenda. I'm very, very excited about this. Been working for a couple of weeks, and even before, actually, I would say for a few years, because what we're doing today is almost like a culmination of a bunch of hobbies over time. And I'm glad to kind of show it to all of you, get your feedback, riff it with you, and see where it goes, right? So we're going to do that right away. This is part of something, a side pet project I have called the Analogy Academy. And the whole idea is, I've been a long-time fan of analogies, and I think there are ways in which you can appreciate and use them a lot better. And that's really the objective behind the Analogy Academy. And for those of you who've been with us in prior workshops, you would know that we eat our own dog food, so to speak. So I'm Lux Narayan, CEO and a co-founder at StreamAlive. We make live sessions a lot more engaging, interactive, and participative, as you've hopefully seen if you joined us a few minutes ago, where everyone's voice counts. It's powered by chat. It works with online events like this, in-person events, and hybrid events as well. Of course, you're going to focus on online today. Right? So we like to think of these as StreamAlive powered live workshops. Don't worry, you won't be seeing my face every week. We're going to keep alternating and mixing it up. So 2 weeks back, we had Devaya, who is the person behind those amazing cred ads and one of India's best copywriters. I think we had 450 signups and a little more than 150 people who actually turned up. A lot of the remaining 300 who couldn't turn up were very disappointed because they realized we don't have a recording for it. by choice because Devaya didn't want to put it out in the public domain for various reasons. He had a very, very candid conversation. He shared some amazing stuff. Next week, we're going to have Manish and Abhishek Ponia join us, and both of them work with some of the top content creators in the world. And they'll be sharing a lot of secrets on writing and virality and just sharing their knowledge across the years and working with folks. So be sure to follow us, stay in touch to look at all these sessions that we do every week. Hopefully they're entertaining, educative, or at best, both of those at the same time. To me, analogies are like an old friend. And just very, very quickly to share my own personal journey as to why I'm personally vested and fascinated by the subject. I realized they've kind of permeated a lot of things I've done over the years. So I've been a technology entrepreneur for about 18 years at this point. My first tryst was at a company called StoreGrid, peer-to-peer data backup software, still active. Vembu.com is the website. Reason I bring it up is storing data in a grid is an analogy. So if you think about it, that logo of showing a grid, which borrows from power plates, and the storing of data in a grid is essentially an analogy, which if you look closely is what typifies many, many product and company names. My next short-lived tryst was something called Eyes and Feet, and that is a super creative logo, or so we thought, which is an E and an F at the same time. Eyes and Feet was all about, there's a little break in the foot of the E if you can't see it too clearly, and that's what makes it an E and an F. So it's Eyes and Feet, online eyeballs, offline footfalls, which was all as, the pain points of a local business. How do I generate online eyeballs in this new world? And how do I get those offline footfalls of people walking into my spa, bar, or restaurant? And that was what we aimed to solve. I won't bore you with the whole story, but for various reasons, we pivoted into something called unmetric. Again, analogy. We're trying to riff off the fact that there's nothing metric about us. And then that begs the question, okay, so what do you do? And then you get into an answer of what you do, and that gets into a conversation. So it is rooted in kind of taking the familiar, which is metric, and literally taking its exact opposite, which is unmetric, and using that as a conversation starter as sorts. Worked beautifully for us in terms of name and brand and the things you could do with it. And StreamAlive is an analogy. I mean, this is a stream. Stream in itself is an analogy because live streaming and slide streaming borrowed from streaming or water flowing on Earth, and alive is the opposite of dead. So don't make your live session dead, make it come alive, and therefore stream alive. And that's an analogy, right? Even in my personal pursuits, analogies have been big, whether it's in comedy. I did a talk once on obituaries, and the whole idea was obituaries as an analogy for lives well led. So what can we learn from the people who've passed on how we should live our lives? Between Unmetric and StreamAlive, I had some time off and used that time for a book called Name, Place, Animal, Thing, which separate story was a genesis of StreamAlive in some ways, but name is an analogy, place is an analogy, animal is an analogy, and so is thing. And the whole thing is a game, which is an analogy for a template for how one could look at life through a certain perspective. And that's why I said, okay, let's try a new thing. Also because I love paying Google for domain names, and registered Analogy Academy. And that's really, you're seeing the first cut really of Analogy Academy. It's very, very raw. It's unfinished, I'll admit, but thank you for being a part of this journey. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing stuff on analogies. And I'd love to know what made you so kindly dedicate an hour of your life today to join us. So what were the reasons? There's no right or wrong over here. So why did you join this session today? I mean, what fascinated you about the subject, about something else, about, is it curiosity? Is it, I don't know. There's no right answer. Learning from the master. My friend, you're in the wrong place, but thank you. As I said, I'm just riffing and playing around with thoughts over here. Okay, I'll assume that's Neela then. Express thoughts better, sounds interesting. All the events have been valuable. Thank you. Okay, this is a note to self. So when I set up this interaction, I said, don't show the people's names who've done that. I don't know why I did that. Next time I'm going to tick that so I know who exactly said what. So I can either thank you or ignore you, but you get the idea. You have the option of choosing who's said the answers and having that as part of the visualization as well. Becoming a storyteller through analogies is absolutely one of the most important reasons. All of us tell stories. If you don't know you tell stories, or you should. And if you tell stories, you need a better analogy toolkit because it's going to allow you to captivate people in a way that's never been possible. Interesting learning to learn for your business. Absolutely. And stories and business. So you guys are going to love this because we've got a bunch of examples through this session where we're going to cover stories, we're going to cover business, and we're going to cover a lot of interesting examples of how people use analogies in very, very powerful ways. But thank you. I mean, all of these are fantastic answers, and there are a few more which are not being mentioned here, and we will cover those as well. But I'm not done with the questions. I'm going to go back over here. And just want to share, as is probably obvious, analogies are everywhere, right? I mean, you're encountering them. Like when I pointed out some of those things, they were not obvious to me. The fact that StreamAlive is an analogy based on alive, based on water bodies, and so on and so forth. What this workshop or mini workshop is about is almost akin to, picture yourself as a baby or a kid who's learning the alphabet, and you're suddenly learning the symbol that looks like an A, which you're told is an A. Obviously, you didn't know that beforehand, and a B and a C. And at that point, with just these three things, you're seeing stuff around you, posters and labels and signs and warning symbols on your baby param and everything, where you recognize the A and you recognize the C and you recognize the B. And pretty soon you graduated to 2-letter words and 3-letter words and bigger words. And that's really our objective today, helping you recognize some of those A's and B's and C's and being able to make down the line those 2-letter words, right? So that is my analogy for what we're going to do in this analogy workshop, so to speak. 2 caveats, declarations, confessions, call it what you will. The first one is the one on the left. This is an experiment. I've never timed this workshop. So either we're going to run famously out of time or we're going to finish crazily ahead of time, but we'll figure it out as we go along. It's a bit of a riff. I've played around with it. It's a culmination of a whole bunch of things. I just thought I'll dump it, put some semblance of order and riff it with you folks and get your feedback and hopefully help in making it better. The second, we're going to see almost a dozen videos. So if your sound system isn't good and if you're not in a place where you can listen to sound either with a headphone or stuff, I strongly recommend you do, because please believe me, you will enjoy a lot of these videos, if not all of them, right? A caveat on that one, some of them do have a bit of profanity. There's no nudity. So it's, I don't know, is it PG-13 or 15? What do you call it? It's PG-13 probably. So make sure there are no little kids who are learning ABC around you, because that would not be a good education. But so there was a few of those videos do have some creative and colorful language, but I think we're all adults in the room and you'll enjoy that. So keep that sound up and we'll do that. Speaking of sound, I always forget this. I'm going to stop share and start share again, this time with sound. Second note to self, always share sound. So folks, there we are. All right, a bit of theory first. You need to mug this up, learn it by heart, and you're going to be asked questions related again on the differences between metaphors, similes, and analogies. But actually, if you're reading it, I mean, feel free to read it, but stop, because we are not going to split hairs. Okay, so yes, we know that analogies are different from metaphors and from similes, and that a simile is a type of metaphor. So all similes are metaphors, but all metaphors are not necessarily similes, and so on and so forth. We're going to use the term very, very loosely. You're just going to call all of them analogies, and then you're going to stretch it a bit. You're going to call other things that are not analogies as well, because they serve the same purpose, right? Also, I'm too cheap to register Metaphor Academy and Simile Academy and everything else. So we're just going to call it analogies and work with that, right? But the examples on the right are interesting. But again, please don't stress about which one it is. It's just, can you explain a concept better, easier, in a more fun and relatable way is really the objective over here. Yeah. It's a culmination also of these 3 books, which I'm a fan of. So the first one is this book called Shortcut, and we'll refer to it a little down the line. It's by John Pollock. And we actually have a video by John coming up down the line. The second one is May the Force Be With You, or Metaphors Be With You. Beautiful collection of a lot of metaphors. Again, we're not splitting hairs between analogies and metaphors. John calls it analogies. Again, he stretches the definition. And this one, as you can see, I'm just about 1/10 or 1/50th into the book, is a book called Surfaces and Essences. which is by the amazing Douglas Hofstadter. And we're going to talk about at least two of these books a little more in detail as we go through it. But parts of these book is really what has found itself into this and a whole bunch of online internet research. That's my foot right now, by the way, sprained it this weekend. That's also my attempt at getting sympathy. So you guys clap more than I deserve. All right, so our approach kind of is exemplified in this video. So this is the first one. Any Guardians of the Galaxy fans, just put your thumbs up. And hopefully you remember this video from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I think.
You need to say to him exactly what I told you to say.
Why don't you just say it?
No one ever listens to me.
I'm just going to make sure the sound is good. This one doesn't have very good sound, but hopefully you can turn it up a little bit more at your end. I'm also going to put subtitles. They're not perfect for YouTube in terms of auto-generated subtitles, but hopefully they help a bit. Don't take it literally.
You need to say to him exactly what I told you to say.
Why don't you just say it?
No one ever listens to me.
Quill, life is a pond, and you've spent your entire life leaping from woman to woman as if they are lily pads upon this great pond. Perhaps what you need to do, Quill, is learn to swim.
That actually made sense.
Yes, it made sense.
No, I mean, that's sort of an analogy. And I didn't know that you were capable of that type of thought.
No, lots of analogies, Quill. Analogies, metaphors, etc. For instance, Gamora's head is like a lily pad because it is green. Analogy. And also stupid looking and flappy.
Flappy?
Because her skin is made of a leaf. Metaphor.
Is it?
Yesterday, I made a poop shaped like a fish. Even my butt is capable of making an analogy.
You need to say to him exactly what I told you.
So yes, the objective is to help you so that even your butts are capable of making analogies. But jokes apart, it's rooted in data. If you think about it, I mean, and I think this, I don't know if this includes all the things we're subjected to from our phones, but our sensors collectively send our brain about 11 million bits a second. Right? That's happening at this instance to you. That's happening on an average across day and space. But our brains can only process a small fraction of that, about 50. Now, given this reality, there is obviously going to be some amount of judicious choice in terms of what our brain chooses to process. And that's based on pattern recognition, on things that are familiar, things that build on stuff that you actually already know, obviously make it through as part of that 50, as opposed to the remaining 11 million minus 50 that don't. And I think the cover of this book reveals it the best. Analogies reveal connections, which is what the brain does, spark innovation, and sell our greatest ideas. And we're going to see a little bit of all of this as we go through this workshop. I mentioned videos. I think we have a dozen videos. So brace yourself. We're going to have a lot of videos. First, I love the introduction to this book by John Pollock. And I fished and found that he actually gave a talk, a TEDx talk, where he talked about it. And that introduction as to how analogies helped him personally were captured in a 1-minute snippet from that talk. So I'd love to share that with you. And we'll just come to it in a second. But first, just wanted to stress the very, very, whoops, too enthusiastic over here.
Let me tell you a story. When I was 34,
Oops.
I got the chance of a lifetime, a job.
Okay, I'm just going to reiterate what we talked about. We're going to talk more about comparisons. I think I found a bunch of definitions. This is what I love the most. It's a comparison, asserts a parallel between two distinct things based on a shared property. So as we go through the examples, I encourage you to look at that shared property and just internalize it in each one. Each and every analogy that you see today, you're going to see a shared property that is there. So we'll start with the video that we're going to see in a second, where there's a shared property between two different things. And again, it includes everything, right? Political slogans, ads, logos. We won't be able to cover all of these, obviously, in a 45-minute session, but we'll touch upon some of them, but they permeate all of these. So here's that, without further ado, that video from John Pollock.
Let me tell you a story. When I was 34, I got the chance of a lifetime, a job interview at the White House to become a presidential speechwriter. Unfortunately, as I sat there watching the chief speechwriter read through my resume, he started frowning. And he looks up and he says, "You've got a lot of other projects going on. What's this about building a cork boat?" And I told him the truth, that since the age of 7, I'd been saving corks from wine bottles to build a Viking ship. And that my plan was eventually, when I had enough, got the boat built, to take it on an epic voyage through the canals of French wine country. And he just looked at me like, who is this nut job? And I could feel the entire interview and my shot at the White House slipping away. I didn't know what to say. And then all of a sudden, this analogy pops into my head. And I said, "Sir, building a cork boat and writing a good speech are a lot alike. In both cases, you take a jumble of small things, corks or words that don't do much on their own. But if you put them into just the right order, they'll take you on an amazing voyage." He got the analogy, and I got the job. And that's the thing about a good analogy at the right moment, because it helps people see things from an entirely fresh perspective.
I think he spelled it out in terms of the shared property, but hopefully you get the gist. It's pretty powerful how, there's two totally disconnected things you never see as being related, but they have a shared property, corks and words. And I would argue you could take any two random things and, given enough time, creativity, and inspiration, come up with a connection between them. This, by the way, for those of you who are training to look at the book, is the one by Douglas Hofstadter, who is very famous for this other book he did in 1979, which a lot of us might have in our bookshelves, but have never finished. I'm guilty of that. I've tried multiple times. It's about Gödel, Escher, and Bach. And it draws a lot of analogies in that 1979 book between mathematics and Gödel's incompleteness theorem, Escher's sketches, which, by the way, are the ones you see over here in the back, and Bach's music as well. And he does that in a beautiful way. A lot of his work has been around analogies and thinking using analogies. I promised not to delve into theory, so this is the last bit of theory you're going to hear from the words of Hofstadter himself. He gave a presidential lecture in Stanford, and I thought a minute and a half of that thing captured a lot of this, using analogies to explain analogies in a very, very powerful way. Surfaces and Essences is his work from about 10 years ago. Brilliant book. Very unique because he and his co-author wrote the book at the same time in French and English. They did not translate one version into the other. The book evolved in two independent languages at the same time, and the two versions are not literal translations of each other, but they're the same book. It's very, very powerful. It is also talking about language and symbology translating across cultures and languages. A lot more than I understand or can pretend to, but do check out the book. It's beautiful. I'll leave you with this 1 minute thing from Professor Hofstadter.
Cognitive science, the cognitive science conferences and journals and so forth, they divide cognition up into all sorts of different pieces. And one of the pieces is always called analogical reasoning. And it's usually put together with problem solving. And it's sort of one little teeny part of thinking. And I sort of decided that I would put it this way, that analogical reasoning, they sort of is the Delaware of cognition. So I kind of feel that shunts it off a little bit. It doesn't make it very central. Now, you might think that Indiana would be a better name for analogical reasoning, but I'm going to be a little bit more daring than that. And it doesn't mean California either, or Texas, or Alaska. First of all, we're going to get rid of the word reasoning. I don't want reasoning. Analogy has nothing to do with reasoning, or it does a little bit, but not much. I mean, it's just a misnomer and it's a misconception of what analogy is. And that's what I really want you to understand. And I suppose that's sort of the bottom line of this talk. If we are going to make any connection between analogy and a geographical situation, we're going to liken it to the interstate freeway system. And it links everything together. Analogy is the interstate freeway system of cognition. It is not one little tiny zone somewhere off in the side. So that's...
Do search out the lecture, Hofstadter Stanford presidential lecture. If I can, I'll pull out some of these links and send them in the after notes to the session as well, so you can enjoy the full version.
That's a cognitive science. The cognitive science
on it. As you can see, I'm still trying to figure out how to move forward with Google Slides without playing a video again. But our objective today is really these things: help you see analogies hiding in plain sight, figure them out when you listen to one, and hopefully smell the difference between a good one and a bad one, and the intent of one and the different categories and classes of each, not from an academic perspective, but the end objective is to then extend those from, those senses really into these, which is creating your own, speaking your own, and hopefully at some point all of us are fluid enough to be able to use it in everyday language and create it between two seemingly disconnected things as well. In order to, as some of the objectives you guys said, for better business, better storytelling, and everything in between. Right. So I just want to switch tracks a little bit here, and we're going to stop this one. Obviously, we see analogies a lot in everyday life, and we've pointed out to a few examples over here, just randomly, no order whatsoever. I'd love to see the dominant ones become bigger and stuff. In 1 to 2 words, we talked about some of them. Where do you see analogies? Think audiovisual media, conversations, life, business, anything. So just put that out there. All right, we got books, news, movies. Oh, absolutely, right? I think articles, books, comedy is a big one. Memes. All right, thank you for saying that. TV, conversations, art, improv, absolutely. Books, articles, movies, a lot of the arts, definitely. We've got memes, we've got ads, we've got pictures, we've got conversations. All of those, right? All of those totally approve. And I'm going to just stop this interaction in a second. If you got an answer and you haven't put it yet, please go ahead and put that. This is great collateral for us as well. Helps us understand what's in people's minds and tailor future sessions too. So it's great feedback. A lot of places. There are a lot. I've summarized it into these 4. The first is cliches. I think we see more of them than we need to. Again, there's nothing wrong with cliches. It helps us summarize an entire body of thought into 1 line or 2. But sometimes it's nice to revisit the ones that are kind of lost meaning and devoid of a soul over time, and seeing if you can revisit it and make it a little better. There's comparisons, which is literally the definition of an analogy. And there are a lot of businessmen and entrepreneurs use comparisons in some very powerful ways. You look at some examples over here. And I'm just going to pepper you with examples. We'll do a couple of exercises around 1 or 2 of these. Again, like I mentioned, this is an experimental workshop. I would love to do a workshop and a session on each of them and play around, but we don't have the time. And I'd love your feedback at the end on which one we should do more of or less of. We'll talk about comedy. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to write a comedy set ourselves, but trust me, each and every one of us is capable of it. And yes, someone mentioned memes in the earlier one. They are a very powerful way of analogy, and we'll touch upon memes. And I think memes are the best way to train your mind to observe analogies and to use them as well. And if you're like me, you should be bothered by this time that we're showing a pentagon, which is an analogy for 5 points, but we have a slide that says we'll touch upon 4 points. And if you're bothered, congratulations, because the analogy bothers you that we're using a pentagon here. So yes, I cheated, I lied. It's actually 5, because the 5th one doesn't exactly fit in this definition. It is mnemonics, which are not exactly an analogy, but they serve the same purpose to make things simple. And I'm glad to see some of my classmates from B School over here today, because I'm willing to bet that when we come to mnemonics, what I say applies to me, applies to pretty much each and every one of you. And I'm taking the creative liberty of seeing that. We'll talk about it. So you got to wait till the end if you want to see that part. Yeah. So that's also about building curiosity gaps and making sure people don't leave your session. Cliches. Let's dive right in. Okay. Again, look, you folks are going to help me with this material. So we use cliches every day. We are subjected to cliches every day. So dig deep. The invitation to this one invited you to talk about cliches. We talked about killing two birds with one stone, if I recall right. But what I want you to do over here is help me build a wall of cliches. So again, sentences here. Can you just type all the cliches that come to your mind? And again, if someone else says it, doesn't matter. Feel free to do it. I'm going to kick it off with my least favorite one. I'm going to say I love you if all of you help me fill the entire screen and the walls. Yeah. Again, fans of Tetris, this is a feature from StreamAlive based on Tetris blocks. Again, while we're filling this out, just a bit of a shameless plug on StreamAlive, because someone asked me in both of the last two sessions, and I thought we should cover it over here. We work with online sessions like Zoom. We also work for in-person sessions. So if you're in a classroom, auditorium, event, or whatever, you can use StreamAlive there as well. And we work for hybrid sessions as well. So for those of you who are looking at using StreamAlive, I just want to point out that little QR code over here. Keep typing your answers, no worries. Just want to let you know that if you were to scan that QR code, and feel free to do so, it would open up a WhatsApp or a messenger kind of chat on your phone, which would allow you to participate exactly like you're participating in the Zoom chat. So you could be participating in the Zoom chat, you could be typing as a message on your phone. And for the first time ever, to the best of our knowledge, nobody's a second-class citizen. Both of those people, the people in the room, the people in Zoom, are going to be treated exactly the same. So if you want to see that in action, I'm going to keep that on for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 second more. And in the meantime, I'll look at, oh, fantastic. Oh gosh, okay, there's so much here. Thank you. Again, if you scan that QR code, you can answer in that browser as well. It's not you, it's me making a mountain out of a molehill. Take it with a grain of sand. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Hit the ball out of the park. Oh gosh, okay, 4 points with a pentagon is like a square peg. No guts, no glory. Shoot me an email. Let's touch base tomorrow at the speed of light. Okay, and I think I missed a few because it kind of disappeared as we do in Tetris. Let's take it offline. Okay, so you get the gist. There's a fantastic, I don't have a copy of it here, but there's a fantastic New York Times article that came out, I think in May this year. And I actually copied some of the cliches that came out of that one. They had one full page just with cliches, right? I'll try and send you the link to that article. I'll try and ungate it so you get a non-gated version. But in case there are some that you're familiar with and missed out typing over here, you probably will see them. And by the way, I could only fit about half the article or 1/3 the article over here. So there's a lot more. I'm not going to ask you to read all of it because you're not in the business of eye tests, but that gives you a gist of how much we're surrounded with. And just looking at the time over here, we'll come back to it if possible. But what I'd love to do is, again, like I said, I'm riffing this workshop over here. If you had time, I'd love to come back here and rework one of the cliches that you folks gave, right? So we'll go through the whole material. If you have time, someone do me a favor and remind me to come back over here to slide 22, and we'll just rework one of the cliches that you gave in the example before. We'll pick one person randomly, pick their cliche, and we'll all rework it together by taking the shared property, the common property, and seeing how we can come up with a better version of it, right? And if you're short on time, hate to show this, but I think it behooves me to do so. You could go to ChatGPT and do stuff like killing two birds with one stone is a common analogy. Give me alternatives that retain the core idea, but are less morbid and don't involve killing of any sort. It's crazy. Planting two seeds with one scope, baking two loaves with one batch of dough, meeting two goals, singing two songs with one voice. Okay, that's not too great. Feeding two birds with one hand, solving two puzzles with one piece, catching two fish with one cast. All have the same shared property. I encourage you, just like Google made us stop wondering and thinking, don't make ChatGPT make you stop creating your own analogies. Create them first yourself. Come up with things that are based on your experiences before looking at it. And again, if you have the time, we'll come back and revisit this and try and do a collective workshop together. Yeah. But we live in crazy times, so. Okay. George Carlin is my favorite comedian. So I had to share this one thing. Euphemisms, again, are a close cousin over here in terms of, dumbing down things, making them progressively simpler. I just had to share this 1 minute clip from George Carlin's thing, Talk on Euphemisms. I'm going to play this one here.
It's worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat, most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue. Then we had the war in Korea, 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables now. And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon.
Beautiful one. I'll try and send you the link after, but someone mentioned comedy, someone mentioned storytelling, and if you look at it, George Carlin is a master at, he's used lessons in language with storytelling, with comedy, and actually given us a bit of a history lesson at the same time as well. So masterful, I thought, right?
It's worse with every generation.
Comparisons. I'm going to spend a few videos on this. Found some amazing. So let me just share. Over the years, I've been collecting a whole bunch of each time I see a video, I kind of copy it, write down which link it is, where it starts, where it ends. And what I'm putting here is probably about 10 to 15% of that compilation. I had to delete some. So it was like, oh gosh, I want people to see this. It's going to be amazing. But these are some of, I think, the best comparisons that people or business people have made. 1 or 2 of you mentioned using analogies better to tell stories about your business, right? And you're going to see some brilliant examples of this after the first video, but the first video is too brilliant not to share. So let's dive right in. And if you look at all of those comparisons, they are basically the gist of a definition of an analogy. It's a comparison. Look for the parallel. Look for 2 distinct things that have a shared property, right? So each of you, as we go through these videos, just look for that shared property. What is the parallel and what is the comparison? And I think I dare say you'll find it fairly obvious in all of these videos, starting with the first one by the master himself.
This is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Simple, beautiful, less than 30-second analogy, right? Be water.
This is what it is, okay?
Elon Musk is famous for talking a lot about the dangers of AI. And now, of course, once he bought Twitter and X and X.ai, now he's doing his own AI thing over here, and that narrative is going to change. But I thought it was pretty powerful how he just made us all scared at a visceral level about the dangers of AI and used a very powerful analogy to do that.
AI doesn't have to be evil to
Again, we are 3 seconds in, there's 25 seconds on this video. In 22 seconds, he's going to explain the concept.
destroy humanity. If AI has a goal and humanity just happens to be in the way, it will destroy humanity as a matter of course, without even thinking about it. No hard feelings. It's just like if we're building a road and an anthill happens to be in the way, we don't hate ants. We're just building a road. And so goodbye anthill.
That's it. Right? Suddenly all of us have probably inadvertently or I don't know, intentionally maybe in some cases, but gone over an anthill or stepped over it, and that we can relate to that. It's a very, very powerful analogy just to wake us up to the fears and dangers of it, rather than just saying it's dangerous, we should all be worried and stuff. In fact, Musk is the master of analogies. So I would, when he speaks, look at how he uses it in seemingly innocuous ways, but in very, very powerful ways. And this is one of the most powerful analogies ever from the world of business.
I remember reading an article when I was about 12 years old, I think it might have been in Scientific American, where they measured the efficiency of locomotion for all these species on planet Earth. How many kilocalories did they expend to get from point A to point B? And the condor won, came in at the top of the list, surpassed everything else. And humans came in about a third of the way down the list, which was not such a great showing for the crown of creation. And but somebody there had the imagination to test the efficiency of a human riding a bicycle. Human riding a bicycle blew away the condor, all the way off the top of the list. And it made a really big impression on me that we humans are tool builders, and that we can fashion tools that amplify these inherent abilities that we have to spectacular magnitudes. And so for me, a computer has always been a bicycle of the mind. Something that takes us far beyond our inherent abilities. And I think we're just at the early stages of this tool, very early stages. And we've come only a very short distance. And it's still in its formation, but already we've seen enormous changes. I think that's nothing compared to what's coming in the next 100 years.
I think this one is powerful on multiple levels. One is, relating it to a bicycle and saying the computer is a bicycle of the mind, and also painting the fact that you haven't seen anything yet, and literally correlating distance that you cover on a bicycle with the distance in terms of possibilities of this new technology that's come up. It's very, very powerful, and I think very, very inspirational. In fact, personally, I've been very inspired by this example. So when I describe StreamAlive to people, when we have a conversation, I tell them most presentations are like the speaker has a megaphone and they're talking to people all the time, and StreamAlive changes that, where everyone gets a telephone where the audience can talk to each other and they can talk to the speaker, and it's a conversation between everybody. And okay, how does that happen? And then we get into a conversation. But there's a lot of stuff to learn from how Steve Jobs has done this repeatedly with the Mac in this case, and down the line with other technologies as well. This I thought was brilliant, and that's why I put it in over here, because it's there in the title, so it's kind of a giveaway. But James Acaster is a very good comedian who comes on a lot of shows, and he did this analogy between two things you would never imagine can be connected. And I would argue any two things can be connected based on this singular anecdote. But he's taken Brexit and making tea and connected the two. So I'm going to, before I play it, just imagine in your head, how would you connect Brexit with making tea, right? And if you actually break it down into, okay, what all does tea involve? It involves water, it involves a cup, it involves a tea bag, it involves this, and then you break it down into constituent elements. It is possible to get somewhere, but probably not exactly where his mind imagined it, which is also the beauty of analogies. You could come up with two different analogies around the same two objects in totally two different ways. But let's listen to his one over here.
I think at the minute the whole thing's even more confusing than it has been. That's why all this is going. The whole in and out thing, I think everyone's finding it difficult. Yep. In and out is a very hard decision. It's like the other day, my flatmate was making me a peppermint tea, and he said, "Would you like the bag leaving in or taken out?" And it's very hard because if you leave the bag in, then over time the cup of tea itself as a whole will get stronger, and it might appear like the bag is getting weaker, but it's now part of a stronger cup of tea. Whereas, if you take the bag out, the tea is now quite weak, and the bag itself goes directly in the bin.
Isn't that brilliant? I mean, how can one draw an analogy between these two things? again, James Acacia does some brilliant analogies. So follow his work if you'd like to take a.
I think at the minute the whole thing's even more confusing.
We talked about comparisons. I think there's some very interesting space and time comparisons, which I also encourage each of us to do in some interesting ways. I'll give you an example. In our previous company, Unmetric, we had a one-line pitch. We were a social media benchmarking and analytics company, and our pitch was using it will make your life so much more easier. So we had a one-line pitch that I'm very, very proud of having created at that time, which was this: 5 minutes on Unmetric will tell you what 5 people need 5 days to do. Is there a bit of hyperbole over here? Perhaps yes and stuff, but it does compress man days into minutes. And that was our pitch. And there's a bit of alliteration there. And that comparison allowed you to visualize how a certain time equates to a certain other time, right? So 5 minutes on Unmetric tells you what 5 people need 5 days to do. And again, I'm trying to sensitize you to how people do this in brilliant ways, and it's all around. So I'm going to show you 2 examples over here. This one is one of my favorite airlines. It's an airline in India called Indigo. And I need to jump into the LinkedIn thing. You're going to jump around all over. Like I said, there's a very, very raw thing over here. I think I might have it loaded up here, actually. There it is, right? So I'm just going to pull this up over here. And again, look out for this. You probably see it a lot more than you think you do. But this is Indigo talking about their year in review in 2022. All right. A lot of corporate stuff, and Indigo has a reputation for doing things in a lot of different ways. You can see the language few and how they put numbers and stuff. Again, numbers after a time lose meaning unless you give it context, unless you compare it to something. So over here, they talk about their awards and they talk about things and all that. So they talk about all this distance traveled, which is 10,200 kilometers, and say that is around 1,000 times more than the number of steps you walk today. Right. So again, relatability, comparison, allowing your steps to be compared to a certain distance. And this is just one person's itinerary, which is probably the most complicated itinerary that they ever had. They keep doing this time and again. You'll see in their copy, you'll see. So they did this, they talk about a number of infants who flew with them and stuff. And it's still less than the number of times Baby Shark was played, but it is almost the same as the population of Nagaland, right? So suddenly you're humanizing those numbers, giving them context. And you'll see this across in companies and brands that do it in a beautiful way. A lot of examples. Again, people choose fast forward. Instead of saying most people choose this benefit that we have, I mean, saying that it translates into the number of cars stuck at a Bangalore traffic signal. Suddenly it's visceral, it's tangible and things. And I think the people who've taken this to a giddy level is some very, very talented lawyers. So I'm going to try and pull that up over here. This is from headlines last month in the New York Times about Trump's upcoming trial. We'll keep politics and stuff out of this, but I couldn't resist putting this in. And, his lawyers were arguing for pushing out the date of the trial. And they just said there's too much of material and there's too little time between now and the trial date for us to actually process all of this. So look, you need to be realistic about this. So how do they convey that? I thought it was brilliant. Okay, this is again a snapshot from the New York Times. You don't have to read all of it, but if you look at it, it's about 11.5 million pages. And they said 11.5 million pages in a bit of legal showmanship is, if you stack it one on top of the other, it's a tower of paper extending 5,000 feet into the sky. Now, guess what? Most of us don't know what 5,000 feet is. And so you take it a level further, saying it's taller than the Washington Monument stacked on itself 8 times, with nearly 1 million pages to spare. Okay. Again, you'll see a lot of these comparisons around time and space. When I did that 5 minutes on Unmetric, it was about time. This one is about space. Time and space comparisons are the most common. So if we had all the time in the world, we would have created the space to create a workshop around doing our own time and space toolkit. We'll do it at some point. But over here, just realize that this happens a lot more often than you think. This one was beautiful. Look at this last part. Even if you review the document starting today and proceed at the pace of 99,762 pages a day, that's the amount it's going to take, is the entirety of Tolstoy's War and Peace, cover to cover, reading it 78 times a day from now until jury selection, right? So how do you communicate that time is not enough? I think it was declined in spite of all this showmanship and brilliant analogies and comparisons, but this was brilliant, I thought. So I thought I had to share this with you guys. Yeah. So that's comparisons. Oops, just cognizant of the fact that we have 10 minutes more. Like I said, I hadn't rehearsed this in terms of time. We're going to rush through a few of these examples. We won't do some of them in the interest of time because you have comedy, memes, mnemonics, and more. Comedy, I think I had to play this one by Ricky Gervais. I'll probably say that about each and every video, but.
And that's what the world is like. People take everything personally. I think the world revolves around them, right? Particularly on Twitter, right? I don't know, I'm not tweeting anyone, I'm just tweeting, okay? I don't know who's following me. I've got 12 million followers. I don't know who's following me. They can be following me without me knowing, right? Choose to read my tweet and then take that personally. That's like going into a town square, seeing a big notice board, and there's a notice guitar.
By the way, whenever you look at a comedy thing, look for the word "that's like." That's always when a comedian is going into an analogy, and once you have that filter, you will see almost every comedian going into "that's like." Right?
Guitar lessons, and you go, but I don't fucking want guitar lessons. What's this? There's a number here. All right, call that, right? Are you giving me guitar lessons? Yeah. I don't fucking want any. Fine. It's
equating Twitter with old.
And that's what the world is like. People take everything personally. I think.
Let's just go to a couple more. This guy is the master of analogies. Again, if any of you are John Oliver fans, please relook all his shows with the analogy lens, and you'll find that he uses it again and again and again and again, right? And he also uses comparisons in some very interesting ways. So we'll skip the first one. He talks about cryptocurrencies and the whole FTX thing, and he actually links, spoiler alert, links how people treated the whole thing to how much we are in love with semicolons. Try and send that in the show notes. But look at this one where he just draws simple comparison just to highlight humor.
It's true. They used QuickBooks. And look, I'm no accountant. I mean, I should be. I look like my most formative childhood memories were in an H&R Block. I look like I fell into a vat of radioactive itemised receipts. I look like what appears if you say Microsoft Excel into the mirror 3 times. But I'm actually...
I look like, you will see him using analogies and comparisons about 5 times in each and every one of his shows. Look out for it. He's a master at how he does it, or his team are masters at how they do it.
It's true. They used QuickBooks. And look, I'm no accountant.
Shameless plug over here. I'm a fan of analogies, so this is a 30-second thing from my set on that.
So you know what I would do if I was a fruitologist? You folks know what a fruitologist is, right? A fruitologist is to fruits what a proctologist is to assholes. So I mean, fruitology is actually a 3-year degree offered at the Trump universities.
So again, literal comparisons between fruitology and proctology were their most powerful and simplest way of comedy and storytelling. So look out for that in comedy stuff. Let's jump into memes. Someone mentioned that, and I think those are very, very, very powerful. And a lot of definitions, but I think Richard Dawkins, who originally came up with the name when he wrote his book on the selfish gene, I think, came up with the first definition where he said it's an idea that rips through the public consciousness. This is the interpretation of it, which is probably the most powerful one. And think of it as a self-replicating chunk of info. It's almost like an inside joke, which is what a meme often is, or things that are collectively shared by a tribe. And it kind of reproduces time and again, right? Again, we'll skip through theory, but I do want to show you how it is in action. And this is one of the most powerful ones. If you haven't seen this ad, you should. So I have to play this.
He wouldn't be afraid to show his feminine side if he had one. His mother has a tattoo that reads, "Son." At museums, he's allowed to touch the art. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends.
Some of you, especially the ones stateside, are probably familiar with the most interesting man in the world. It translated into a meme. I mean, this was sitting fodder for a meme. So if you look at it, you probably saw some of these on the internet and people sharing it, and sometimes it keeps getting a rebirth very, very often. But the theme is very, very similar. I don't do X, but in the rare exceptions that I do, here's a caveat. So task caveat. I don't use Internet Explorer, but it's to find a better browser. So there's a joke there. I don't go to Moda, but when I do, I simply walk in, and you'll find a whole sequence of this. So here's a small tip. A lot of us look at memes and just gloss by. When you next time you see a meme or something like this, it doesn't make sense. Stop, look at it, understand the essence of it, and see if you can make it your own in some ways. Even if you don't publish it, just make it sketchpad. Spend a minute with it. If you don't understand it fully, and go to Know Your Meme or one of those websites and understand it a little better, because they're there all the time. There's this whole term called Drake posting that happened, and you've probably seen this picture used in multiple ways. But again, it is like something bad, something good, right? And these are apparently two snapshots people took on one of the concerts that he did, and it became a meme. Now, why did that become a meme, not something else, God knows. But once it's there for public consumption and leverage. And I think a lot more of us should be posting memes than we currently do. Sometimes they're topical. So when the whole ship, I think it's called the Ever Given, when it got stuck in the Suez Canal, a lot of jokes obviously happened. But the meme that came out of it was this little bulldozer that was trying to pull it out over there. So that became a meme for huge Herculean mammoth task that is impossible to complete, but still trying a little effort, which is quite minuscule in comparison. So my inbox, but yeah, my enthusiasm, I have little enthusiasm for it. Mobile ads, the close button. COVID, angst, and going for a daily walk that is recommended, right? Again, when you see that, digest it, smile at it, and see if you can come up with one of your own. I think it's a good exercise for all of us to do. Sometimes memes meet memes. This is like a meta meme, where ship stuck, ship unstuck, right? It's a beautiful encapsulation of humor in a small way when you get into it. So I just encourage more and more of us to be on the inside track on some of these. And you have the time. Yes. Oh gosh. Okay. Next time I'll show you a beautiful video meme as well. Actually, for those of you who are okay sticking on a little extra, we'll jump into we'll jump into the video meme as well. There's a video meme. And if you break it down, each and every one of us can create different things. I looked at the video meme as preparation for today's workshop, and I said, oh, we can actually use it for StreamAlive in a very interesting way. I hadn't thought of it before that, but it came up with it. If you actually sit and spend a minute with these, it kind of comes up. Yeah. We'll rework one later. Last one, mnemonics. Again, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm going to finish in time, and then we'll stick around for anyone who wants to riff on some of these. This is a hat tip to my friends who are here from our days at B School, but I'm willing to bet these are the few models that we remember from our days at B School. Again, mnemonics are not analogies, but they're very, very similar in terms of the transmission of an idea. And if you think of it, the ones we still remember a few decades, I won't give it away in terms of how many decades, but a few decades after college, are the ones that had a nice sound, like SWOT analysis, like swatting a fly, right? Or the cash cow in the BCG matrix, because how else would you have stars, question marks, cows, and dogs in the same chart? And it kind of makes sense in some way. Right? SWOT analysis. And sometimes they have very, very creatively insipid names, but they still stick and become famous. And the ones in the next chart are examples of that, especially the last one, which is the McKinsey 7S model. Because there are 7 words with the letter S. There's Porter's 5 forces model, and there is the 4P model. And this is really the inspiration behind having a pentagon with 5 different things. And if you remember, actually, I have this question I'd love to, before those of you who need to drop out, drop off. This is just feedback from me in terms of which one we should do a workshop on next time around. So I'm going to skip through some of the ones we didn't work on. We can get on it later. But help me out here. If you are to choose that we do a workshop on one of these 5, in this 1-hour session, which one do you think it would be? Just type 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the chat, because it gives me a sense on which one to work on next time around and which ones to skip. Okay, not on comparisons, not too much in comedy, a bit of mnemonics. Gosh, you guys are, you got some meme lords over here. Okay. Cliches, comparisons. Okay, comparisons are coming in close. Just going to pull the timer over here. He's going to put another 10 seconds. Ignore the time till when it goes to 4:50. I'm going to stop. Yeah. I think some of you are putting multiple options. I know I allowed that, but okay. Comparisons, comedy, and memes. That doesn't help much. Okay, but I guess those 3 as opposed to the others. Okay. Cool. So next time around, we'll definitely do a workshop around memes, and we actually have one interestingly over here. So if you want to stick around, there's a very entertaining video from Bahubali, which is, I thought, one of the most brilliant memes used by a mutual fund company. And we can make it our own, and I'll show you how. So hopefully that's enough, curiosity gap for you to stick around and listen to that one. But thank you for answering that question. Just a quick summary. Analogies are everywhere, as we've hopefully seen. We haven't even covered ads, by the way. The objective of today's workshop is to help you recognize them. Take that meme next time, take that piece of comedy, see how you might do it differently, look at the comparison, think of articulating your company's proposition a little better, recognize them, make them, even if you don't share them externally, just make them and keep them in a little notebook somewhere. And when you're comfortable, start putting them out to the world to see, right? And hey, if McKinsey can have the 7S model and 4P model and 5 forces, I'm going to go with the C3M2 pentagon in mind. Cliches, comparisons, comedy, memes, and mnemonics. So that's what I'm calling this one. Again, familiarity. When you see C3s, M2, it kind of triggers, Star Wars and C3PO and stuff. Maybe we'll change it to P and O for the bottom two and call it the C3PO pentagon or something like that. You might see that in future workshops and you know where that came from. But again, familiarity, right? Because among those 11 million bits competing for your mind space, I want to be in that 50. And if I say C3PO instead of ABCX, it's probably going to be a better at that. So thank you everyone for joining us. If you hang around, we'll go through the Bahubali video and do an exercise on that. We're going to keep repeating this. Like I said, this is riffing. Obviously, it's more content than can fit in an hour. So ideally, either increase the time or we'll knock off some content over here. If you got feedback, would love to hear it. We'll also maybe pick up one of the cliches and rework that. So if you stick around, we'll do that as well. We got those 2 exercises we'd love to do. If you enjoy this workshop, we'd appreciate all the help. Follow us. We keep doing these at lu.ma/StreamAlive. We post about it quite shamelessly on all our social handles. So you follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where we're most prolific. And if you liked it, do help spread the word so we can have more people joining this and creating better analogies and lesser cliches going forward. So those of you who got to drop out, thank you very much. Those of you who can stay on, you're in for a treat with that video. And then we'll try and maybe make it our own in some ways. Yeah. Thank you, folks. If you got to drop out, wholly understand. But otherwise, please stick on. Yeah. I'm going to Alt-tab here. Sorry, before we jump out, I just want to see if we had any questions. Is this being recorded? Yes, it is. Lesson, don't string the analogy. Absolutely, that's the lesson. Yes. So StreamAlive also picks up questions that people have put in the chat. I should have mentioned that to you right on, saying if you have any questions, put it in the chat. Note to self, do it next time around. Without further ado, here is that video.
राजकुमारी नाद्वे मणिबंधम बहिर्मुखम तेजा
Okay. I don't know if it's just me, but I found this hilarious. This is based on a clip from an Indian movie called Bahubali. And as you can see, let's actually riff a few things over here. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. And I think we're going to get ambitious. Our first meme that we're going to rework is actually going to be a video meme, the one you just saw. So if I were to ask you, and again, I have my own idea for something about StreamAlive, but put it about anything. If you look at the core idea over there, it is like 3 is better than 1. So the old way, the boring way, the vanilla way is that one thing. And we do these three things and therefore take care of the job at hand because three is better than one. So I don't think we need to think of anything where it could be, I love it too, right? It could be 3 versus 1. So I'm actually going to kick off the chat by putting my own idea for StreamAlive that came up. Again, I was just riffing this as we're looking through it. More the merrier, absolutely, Dan. So if you want, so think of an instance where more the merrier, right? Dan, I know for a fact you're with a company in the design space. Now, if you were to position the other guys in design as doing just one thing, but your company does 3 things, so you could put those guys as just doing design, but you do A, B, C, right? So for example, I can put the audience as those villains as boredom in live sessions and slides. Yep. So trainer indeed. Try to put the 3 and the 1 as well, right? So for example, I'm just going to give you my answer for StreamAlive, for example. Again, I'm making stuff up, but if I were to take that meme and shamelessly just copy it and just replace the text, I would put those bad guys as the boredom in live sessions. You want to kill that boredom. People try to kill it with just slides, but 3 to tango, absolutely. The 3 to tango in our case are slides, interactions, and chat or something like that. So anytime you can distill your entire proposition into just, okay, these 3 things that we do are better than the one thing that others do. You can borrow that exact same meme or something else that is similar, use it and leverage the power of public consciousness and humor and everything without really expending too much of effort. Cool. I'm going to skip the second exercise because we've gone well over time, but 3 arrows, 1 bow, 3 meals and 1 stomach. Okay. Love that, yes. Yeah, but the good idea is that, right? I mean, you just sit and spend a little time with this. It just triggers ideas, thoughts, and stuff. So I'm going to encourage you to do that each time you see a meme that someone posts on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or something saying what else you can do. Birds and the bees. All right. I'd love to know more about the birds and bees in this instance, but yes, absolutely. Right. Super. Folks, we're going to call it a day. And we're going to end the workshop per se, but if any of you want to hang around, give us feedback on how we can make this better going forward, happy to stick around for a couple of minutes till about 1:15 Eastern. That's about 5 minutes from now. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us and staying on beyond time. Feel free to give us feedback now or later on how we can make this better. The objective is really to have fun, learn a skill, and hopefully do more. I think we should have more interactions and workshops, which means sacrificing some of those things, but it's always difficult to figure out which of your darlings you want to kill, so to speak. Again, analogy. Too many analogies are rooted in murder and killing and stuff. I don't know why. But hopefully we'll change that one analogy at a time. Thank you, everyone.
Just one thing, Lux. You're supposed to go back to slide 22.
Ah, you must have been that kid in school who was class monitor or 1 points for participation, but I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much. Yes. Which one is slide 22 now? I need to. I can't believe we covered over 50 slides over here, but let's scroll all the way back to slide 22, which was, we said we'll rework one analogy, right? So we looked at different, let's do that actually. We're up for it. Super. Thanks for reminding me. Again, let's maybe rework one of those analogies over there. So here's what I'm going to do. I think some of the people have left us, but let's keep spinning a wheel till you find someone who's not left us. So what I would have done if you had everyone who was in the session is literally gone here and said, I want to pick someone from the folks who answered that question. So which is a question over there. Yeah, type all the cliches that you can remember. So let's pick one person who gave us a cliche, and if they are still around, we'll ask them what cliche they put in their answer. Susan, I don't know, Susan is still around?
She's left. She left, but she wrote that apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Doesn't want to shoot? Okay, yeah. But since she's not here, I'm going to knock that off. It's just fun to keep spinning a wheel here. And we'll spin it again without Susan's name. I might have to do some 5 times or something like that. So I hope you enjoy watching spinning wheels. Is Neela still?
No, she's left.
She's left as well. Okay, Dan, why don't you tell us which cliche you had? Since you told us about slide 22. Otherwise, you're going to keep spinning this wheel and till we get someone who's still here.
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay. Cool. But the idea was basically, but thanks for reminding me. The idea was basically to revisit one of the cliches that people gave. And next time around, I'll make sure we have time for it. So I'm just going to pull the answers here.
This is dance at the speed of light.
Ah, okay. Got it.
At the speed of light.
Cool.
So Dan, if I would ask you to riff that and give an alternative to at the speed of light that is not at the speed of light, but still communicates speed, what might that be? And by the way, folks, any of us can type it in the chat now.
You want me to type it out?
No, just unmute yourself. I'm going to stop share. We'll just have a conversation. There's just a few of us over here.
Faster than I can see. Old General Singh.
We could do that, yes. Faster than one can think. What else is fast, right? Anyway, get the gist. So the idea was like a cheetah chases prey, like different things. And sometimes it doesn't have to be the fastest thing. So cheetah chases its prey is actually slower than the speed of light, but it doesn't matter, it's still fast enough. So that's the other thing. It doesn't have to be the absolute end of the spectrum in terms of, in this case, speed. It can be something that is in between. It can still convert a lot of speed and still work. And I would argue that like a cheetah, I want to do this fast, like really fast, like a cheetah chases its prey, right? Works better than faster than the speed of light. Because that's so hackneyed, that's so used, that's so overdone, but a cheetah chases its prey is not so much. So that's a great example, Tim.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Sisters. My 2 sisters.
Thank you for joining. Catch you all later.
Hi, Arya. Bye.
Hey, Angie.
Bye, everyone.
Tashi.
Ta-da.
Ciao. I'm going to end this. Got to jump to another call in a minute using the same Zoom room. So sorry, folks. I just need to close this one. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.